The rain had not stopped since morning, and the city looked colder than it ever had before. Cars splashed muddy water across broken sidewalks while people rushed past each other without making eye contact, too busy to notice the trembling woman standing beneath the flickering bus stop light. Her thin sweater clung to her skin, her hands shook from hunger and exhaustion, and her tired eyes searched desperately for a place where she could survive the night. Across the street, luxury cars rolled into the shining glass tower owned by one of the youngest CEOs in the city, a man known for his success, discipline, and silence. But on that gray afternoon, when the poor woman finally gathered enough courage to step toward him and whispered with tears in her eyes, "I have nowhere to sleep tonight," everything changed in a way no one could have imagined. If you believe kindness can still change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes to support more emotional stories that touch the heart. Rowan Hale had built his company from nothing after losing almost everything at a young age. At 36, he was respected, feared, and admired in the business world, but behind the expensive suits and polished reputation was a man carrying years of loneliness. After his wife passed away during childbirth, Rowan devoted every waking hour to raising his 7-year-old daughter Ivy while managing Hale Dynamics, a technology company worth millions. Employees described him as cold but fair. Reporters called him the "ghost CEO" because he avoided parties, interviews, and public attention. Yet every evening, no matter how exhausted he was, he returned home early enough to help Ivy with homework and tuck her into bed. She was the only light left in his world. That afternoon had already been difficult. Rowan had just ended a tense board meeting where investors pressured him to cut jobs before the company's next expansion. The conversation left a bitter taste in his mouth because he remembered what poverty felt like. He remembered nights sleeping in shelters with his mother after his alcoholic father abandoned them. He remembered pretending not to be hungry at school because he could not afford lunch. Success had erased the visible scars, but the memories never truly disappeared. As Rowan exited the building with his assistant beside him, he noticed the woman standing near the curb. Most people ignored her instantly. Her shoes were soaked, her hair messy from rain, and she carried an old backpack that looked almost empty. Security guards were already moving toward her, assuming she was begging. But before they reached her, she looked directly at Rowan with eyes filled not with manipulation, but pure desperation. Her voice cracked softly as she spoke the words that froze him in place. "Please. I have nowhere to sleep tonight." For a moment, the city noise faded around him. Rowan saw something painfully familiar in her expression. Not laziness. Not deceit. Fear. The kind of fear a person carries when they have reached the end of hope. The guards tried escorting her away, but Rowan stopped them with a single glance. He asked her name. She hesitated before quietly answering, "Selena." Her voice was weak, almost embarrassed, as though life had trained her to apologize for existing. Rowan noticed bruises fading along her wrist, and though she tried hiding them beneath her sleeve, he saw enough to understand she had escaped something terrible. His assistant whispered that it could be dangerous and advised him not to get involved. The city was full of scams. People lied every day. But Rowan ignored the warning. Something inside him refused to walk away. He offered to buy her a meal. Selena stared at him in disbelief, as though she had forgotten kindness still existed. She followed him silently to a nearby diner while rain hammered against the windows outside. Inside the warm restaurant, she looked painfully out of place among business workers eating lunch. Her hands trembled when the waitress placed hot soup in front of her. Rowan noticed she tried eating slowly to appear polite, but hunger eventually took over. He pretended not to notice how fast she finished the breadbasket. During the meal, fragments of her story slowly emerged. She had arrived in the city 3 months earlier after escaping an abusive relationship in another state. She worked temporary jobs cleaning offices and washing dishes until the restaurant where she worked suddenly closed. With no family nearby and almost no money left, she had spent several nights sleeping in bus stations and public parks. Earlier that morning, the shelter she depended on turned her away because it was overcrowded. Rowan listened quietly, though every word tightened something in his chest. Selina never begged for money. She never exaggerated her suffering. In fact, she spoke as though she believed none of it mattered. That honesty affected him more deeply than tears ever could. When the meal ended, Rowan surprised even himself with what he did next. He handed her the keycard to one of his company's unused guest apartments located a few blocks away. His assistant looked horrified. Selina herself refused at first, convinced there had to be a hidden condition. But Rowan simply told her no one should sleep on the streets during a storm. He instructed his driver to take her there safely and arranged fresh clothes and groceries for the apartment. That should have been the end of it. But fate had other plans. The following morning, Rowan arrived at work expecting to forget the encounter and return to his normal routine. Instead, he walked into chaos. His daughter Ivy had insisted on coming to the office after school because her babysitter cancelled unexpectedly. While Rowan handled urgent meetings upstairs, Ivy wandered into the lobby and accidentally slipped near the marble staircase. Employees panicked. People screamed for help. Before anyone else reacted, Selina rushed forward. She caught Ivy seconds before the child's head struck the sharp edge of the stairs. The little girl burst into frightened tears while Selina held her carefully, whispering comforting words. By the time Rowan reached the lobby, pale with panic, he found his daughter wrapped safely in the arms of the same woman he had rescued the night before. That moment changed everything. Ivy instantly became attached to Selina. Perhaps children recognize goodness faster than adults do. While Rowan remained cautious, Ivy followed Selina around with endless questions and innocent smiles. Selina, despite her difficult past, treated the child with extraordinary gentleness. For the first time since losing his wife, Rowan saw warmth returning to his daughter's lonely heart. Days turned into weeks. Selina insisted on repaying Rowan somehow, so she began helping part-time in the company daycare center. Employees quickly noticed her natural kindness with children. She remembered every child's name, comforted anxious toddlers, and somehow made even difficult children feel safe. Parents who worked in the building started praising her constantly. But not everyone welcomed her presence. Some executives disliked seeing a homeless woman around the company. Rumors spread quietly. People questioned Rowan's judgment. A few tabloids even published humiliating headlines suggesting the CEO had secretly started a relationship with a stranger from the streets. Rowan ignored the gossip publicly, but privately the pressure grew heavier every day. One evening, after staying late at work, Rowan found Selina alone on the rooftop terrace staring at the sunset over the city skyline. The orange light painted soft shadows across her face, but sadness still lingered in her eyes. For the first time, Rowan asked her something personal. He asked why she never contacted her family. The silence that followed was. Selina finally admitted she had spent most of her life unwanted. Her mother died when she was young, her father struggled with addiction, and the abusive man she escaped had isolated her completely from everyone she once knew. She confessed that after months of sleeping in shelters and surviving alone, she stopped believing her life mattered to anyone. Rowan understood that feeling more than she realized. That night, as city lights flickered below them, two broken people slowly began healing each other without even noticing it. Weeks later, Ivy's school organized a family event where children presented drawings of the people they loved most. Rowan arrived late because of work, expecting to see the usual pictures of parents and pets taped across classroom walls. Instead, he froze when he saw Ivy's drawing. It showed three people holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. One was Ivy. One was Rowan. And the third person was Selina. Underneath the drawing, written in shaky child handwriting, were the words, "My family saved me from being lonely." Rowan felt emotion hit him harder than any business failure ever had. For years he believed success meant protecting himself from pain. He built walls around his heart because losing his wife nearly destroyed him. But standing there in that classroom, staring at his daughter's innocent drawing, he realized loneliness had quietly taken over their lives. And Selena had changed that. But happiness rarely arrives without a final test. One cold afternoon, Rowan received shocking news. Selena's abusive ex-boyfriend had tracked her down. Security cameras caught him waiting outside the company building. When confronted, the man became aggressive and threatened Selena publicly. She broke down in fear, convinced her past would ruin everything she had rebuilt. Rowan did not hesitate. For the first time in years, he used his influence not for business, but to protect someone vulnerable. He contacted authorities, arranged legal protection, and personally ensured Selena would never face that nightmare alone again. Watching him stand beside her despite public judgment shattered the last walls around Selena's heart. She cried openly that night, overwhelmed not by fear, but by the unfamiliar feeling of finally being safe. Months passed. The woman who once stood trembling in the rain transformed completely. Selena returned to school through a program Rowan's company sponsored. She eventually became director of the company's childcare foundation, helping homeless mothers and children across the city. News outlets that once mocked her story began celebrating her resilience instead. But the most beautiful transformation happened inside Rowan's home. Laughter returned to the house again. Ivy no longer felt alone. And Rowan finally understood that love sometimes enters life quietly, disguised as a stranger asking for help on a rainy afternoon. 1 year after the day they first met, Rowan organized a charity event for homeless families in the same city where Selena once wandered hopelessly through the streets. Hundreds attended. Cameras flashed. Reporters filled the ballroom. But Rowan only looked at Selena. During his speech, he told the audience something they never expected from a billionaire CEO. He admitted that the woman everyone once ignored had actually saved him. She reminded him that success means nothing if compassion disappears from the heart. She taught Ivy how to smile again. She brought warmth back into a house filled with grief. And in saving her, he unknowingly saved himself too. Before the event ended, Rowan walked across the stage, took Selena's trembling hand, and asked her to spend the rest of her life with him. The entire ballroom fell silent before erupting into tears and applause. Selena could barely speak through her crying, but the answer in her eyes said everything. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and comment because your support helps emotional stories like this reach more people around the world. And before the ending,